good morning, good morning. Let's start this morning out of Hebrews chapter 12. Verse 14, he says, "Pursue peace with all men, and the holiness without which no one will see the Lord, watching diligently so that no one falls short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness spring up and cause trouble, and many become defiled by it." I think there's another version that says, watching diligently so that no one fails to receive the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness spring up and cause trouble. Now, bitterness, I was thinking about bitterness, and in particular how bitterness is not the attack. You know, when you are attacked by something like the enemy comes, we're talking about Satan schemes against someone, throws some attack, influences someone to attack someone. The attack is not bitterness, right? The attack is an attack, whatever it is, a pressure to try and get you to compromise your values. Something, financial pressure, emotional pressure, someone talks about you, something like that. There is some sort of attack that he schemes, and that is the attack level number one. And that is something, when a person stands strong, they stand in the face of adversity. That is a strong person, right? They're standing on their values. But there's another level beyond that. It is the bitterness level, or the response, the lingering effects of the attack. He doesn't try just one thing. He's trying a second thing beyond that. And that's I won't even say we have to watch out for it. I'm not afraid. He's not tricky, and he's not going to succeed. That's what I'm going to say. But I'm going to present this warning to us and a caution that we don't let standing in one victory be an excuse to fall in the other attack, the attack of bitterness, the attack that also, what do you call it, the pensiveness that can come from having gone through a traumatic experience or gone through a dangerous time where people become cautious, like a cat, like a skittish cat. I don't know, we have a cat. But when you come and if you step your foot really hard beside the cat, they jump and they do that whole Tom and Jerry thing and and run away. That kind of response to everything, where you're not responding properly and in a godly fashion due to the former attack that has come. No, he says, don't fall short of this grace of God, or don't fail to receive this grace that brings you through the trial, that grace that brings you above the trial. When you're flying in a plane and it's cloudy out and it's stormy and stuff, if you go above the clouds, you're in a different realm. You're in the realm of the sun, right? That is what the grace of God can do with us. When we go through a trial, when the enemy comes and is beating on you with an attack or whatever, you go through a hard time, even if it's a hard time that you've created, God can give us grace that brings us not only through it, but let me read this out of Daniel. I'm going to start in Daniel. We're going to jump over to Daniel 3, chapter 25. He can not only bring you through it, but here, after Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were brought through the fire, says, he answered and said, "But I see," now this is the king speaking, "I see 4 men loose and walking in the midst of the fire, and they are unharmed." So the fiery trial was beating them. They were unharmed, though, right? They're standing. "And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." So they had the grace of God with them. They were standing in the trial. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. The officials, governors, captains, and king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair on their heads singed. This is total victory. The fiery trial came, and the fire had no power on them. They stood strong. Through many long years, they stood strong. I'm stretching this out to apply to our kind of situations. They stood strong. They stood strong in faith through the years. They stood strong when people told them to compromise. They stood strong. They preached the uncompromised word. When people said, no, no, don't say that, it offends me, they stood strong and said, no, this is what the word says. I love you, but I will not compromise the word. They stood strong, right? Nor was a hair on their head singed, neither were their coats changed, neither were their coats changed. They didn't change what they were wearing. They stood in the midst of the fire with the Lord and did not compromise, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. That's the last line of verse 27. Nor had the smell of fire even come upon him. What is he saying? He said they went through the trial. They stood in the trial. And when they came out, the effects, the lingering effects of the trial were not impacting them anymore. They came out without the smell of the fire. I'm saying that when we go through a trial, we can let the grace of God be more than enough in us. And so that when we come out, there is no lingering effect. There is no bitterness. There is no skittishness. That the power of God is way more than enough. And if we have bitterness that we've experienced, or we've felt like, oh, I'm just clinging to that bitterness, I thank God we can take it back to the Lord and say, hey, Lord, I may have missed it before. I may have clung to that before, but I cast this off. I loose that bitterness from me, and I take hold of your grace. I come boldly to the throne of grace to obtain mercy and find this grace, that there be no smell of smoke from this, that the devil get absolutely zero victory out of the trial he tried to bring me through, and that you receive all the glory for this victory in Jesus' name. Be blessed.